if you do math, specifically Methods 3, 4, or any other subject that's math heavy, what I'm about to tell you is going to completely destroy the limiting beliefs you have behind your ability to get good at that and surpass all your friends and become the top of your class, right? The reason I know this is because I wasn't always good at math. Math wasn't one of my strongest subjects. When I was in primary school, I was actually behind everyone else in math, and I was not able to do as good as all my other friends, all my other classmates. But the way I got good at this was in a 2-week period. When I was in year 5, I think my dad just made me do an hour of math questions every single day during the school holiday, right? He gave me a book and he said, okay, you're gonna do these questions every single day for an hour until the end of the school holiday. And then I really didn't want to, but I can't just say no. So I ended up doing an hour of math questions every single day until the end of the school holiday. And by the time I got to the end of that, right, I started going to school again, I was ahead of everyone else, okay? And I know I was in primary school when I did that, and this might not be relevant, but let me tell you another example of when this happened. When I was in year 12, which is like 4 years ago, when I was in year 12, I was getting tutored for every subject but math methods, right? So math methods, I was like trying to drive that myself and trying to do really well with math methods. So with math methods, I was sort of struggling because for all these other subjects, you have accountability. Like the tutors provide you with accountability. They give you questions every single week and you do the questions, and you're sort of getting pushed to do better and better every single week. You have to do the questions before you go to class, whatever, right? But for math methods, it's very easy to fall behind when you don't have a tutor, you don't have someone pushing you constantly to do well. Did you do these questions? Did you do those questions? So it's so easy to fall behind in class. So what ended up happening was I started falling a little bit behind, and my grades started to suffer. And I was like, well, math is one of my strong subjects now. If I'm not able to do really well in math, then I'm not going to be able to get a good ATAR at all. I'm not going to be able to come to Monash University to do engineering or even get a scholarship, because I wanted to get a scholarship. So what I ended up doing was I was like, okay, I'm going to dedicate like 4 to 6 hours just to go through math questions. So I took my maths book. This is like my Methods 3, 4 book. I sat down and I found the minimum required questions to get the maximum effort, okay? So I'm gonna explain what that means. There's this thing called the 80-20 rule, okay? And what that means is you have to do the 20%, which will give you the 80% of results. I'm gonna say that again. You have to do the 20% of work, which will give you 80% of the results, right? If you can cut out that 80% of work, that's gonna give you the 20% of results, and you do the 20% of work that actually matters to get the 80% of results, then you can minimize the time you spend on studying and you can get better grades than everyone else, right? Win-win for everyone. So the way I did this was I went through my textbook and I was a few lessons behind, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to get ahead of everyone else, okay? So I spent 4 hours circling the questions. First of all, I would go and circle the questions which I had to do, right? If I did this question, this question, this question, and this question in this exercise, it means that I would be able to understand completely all the types of questions they could ask in this topic, right? I went and I started circling all the questions for all the questions I was about to do. I got to the end of like 4 chapters, and then I just started doing them for like 4 hours straight. I would just smash out these questions. I would do all these questions. And it got to the end of the 4 hours and I was so ahead of everyone else. I was so ahead of my class. And it's not because I did all the questions in the exercise. It's because I did specifically chosen questions so that I was able to get a good understanding of the concept and then move on. Get a good understanding, move on. Get a good understanding, move on. And I continued this for like 4 to 6 hours. And by the end of 4 to 6 hours, I was ahead of the class by a couple weeks, right? And when I tell you this is the reason I did good for methods, this is what started the spiral of upward success, I really mean it. Because when I think back at methods, even for a couple of weeks after that, I was like, oh, if I didn't spend those 4 hours doing those questions, like intense 4 hours doing questions and getting ahead of everyone else, then I would be struggling and lacking in class, right? But when I think about it, that is what started. And the fact that I remember that means that it actually put me in the right path, because I remember sitting down and doing those questions because it was like, I need to take control of my life. I'm going to do these questions because otherwise I'm going to get a really bad score. So I sat down and I started doing all these questions. By the end of it, I was ahead. And then when I went to school, in like every single week we would do questions, but I'd already like thought about those questions before. I'd already done like a few of those questions. So during class, I would just smash out more questions. And now what I'm doing is I'm increasing my exposure to the concepts. And I've already exposed myself to the concept once. Then I exposed myself to the concept for the second time during class, right? And every single time I did that, I got better and better. So I have that first point of contact, which is that 4 intense hours of studying where I just go through questions and questions, the minimum required questions, right? 80-20 rule. Do the 20% of questions from a topic that give you the 80% of results or understanding about that topic. Move on, and then you can do the bulk of the questions, because yes, you need to do a lot of practice when you do math. You can do the bulk of the questions during class, right? During class, when the teacher's teaching you how to do the questions, giving you all the theory on the whiteboard, you can just start doing the questions because you already know the theory and you've already done a few questions. So you can just start doing the other questions. And when you're struggling with anything, you go ask your teacher. So this is how you make your class time more effective and your study time more effective, right? Super simple. You're actually only 4 hours away or 6 hours away from becoming the top of your class, because it starts an upwards spiral of success. When you start doing this, then what happens is you get ahead of everyone else, you take classwork seriously, you go and ask the correct questions from your teacher during class, and then you've been exposed to the concept so many times that it's really hard to forget these concepts. So action step right now is go, make circles on your book for the minimum amount of questions you need to do to get the maximum depth of knowledge. Go and start doing those questions for 4 hours straight, right? By the end of the 4 hours, you will thank yourself because you've gone so far in the textbook ahead of your class that when you start doing these things in class, it's not only easy for you, but now you have more time instead of just listening to your teacher to do the questions in class, and you can ask the specific questions that you struggle with instead of putting them off, right? Because what ended up happening for me when I was in like year 10, year 11, is I would make notes of questions that I would struggle with during class and I would never ask my teacher. And the worst feeling is when you actually get questions similar to that on the test, and you knew you had the opportunity to actually go through this with your teacher, but you didn't because you were lazy. So that's the easiest way to become really good at this, is make sure that you are proactive in everything you do. The secret to all of this is being proactive. If you're able to be proactive, right? Do this beforehand, it will increase the efficacy or the efficiency during class. And that in turn will lead to an upward spiral of success, which will make you really smart, and it'll make you get the grades you want, because math is about practice, and practice needs to be done over and over again because it increases the amount of contact that you have with certain concepts. And the more contact you have with certain concepts mentally, the better you get, and the more you can apply these concepts during the exam when they ask you more messed up questions. Also, since your first SAC is coming up, and if you're anything like me, you have so much anxiety around whether you're ready or not for that SAC, I've created a practice SAC for you, because let's face it, your teacher's probably only going to give you like 1 or 2 practice SACs, so you need more practice SACs. So I've created a practice SAC, and me and Adrian have specifically tailored these questions so that it will assess you in the optimal way, so you know exactly if you're ready or not for the SAC, right? So click the link in the description, go to that website and download that practice SAC. It's free. I'll send you the practice SAC and also the solutions. And if you can do it in the correct time, or like the time that we recommend, it means that you're probably in a really good state to sit the exam. You don't have to, or the SAC, and you don't have to have anxiety about that. But if you're struggling with any questions, you can always go back to our solutions. You can see how we think about this, and then you can rewire your brain. And then once you know exactly how to do all the questions, you can rest assured that you're going to be ready for the SAC.